Good morning, everybody. I'm Phum, yeah, from Thailand. So I'm the. Right now we are in the process of proposed proposals to the UNEP for study about applying TEEBAgriFood policy for the rice study in Thailand. So as I said, right now we are in the state of a proposed proposal. Any suggestions are really welcome to improve the study that we are planning to do it. Why is rice in Thailand? So this is information of the land use in Thailand. So the biggest proportions of the land use in Thailand is actually the forest, the protected area, which cover about 33% of the land use in country. The second one is the paddy rice, which cover about 23% of the land use in Thailand. So there are two main regions that are growing rice in Thailand. The first one is in the central regions here. The second one is in the northeast regions. It's over here. The yellow color means the rice paddy. So in these two regions, there are many different contexts of the rice paddy. The first one is that in the central regions, there are irrigated rice farming. So that means most of the rice paddy in these regions can access to irrigation system. So that means they can, the farmer over there can grow rice at least twice a year. On the other hand, the rice paddy in the northeast regions of Thailand is almost 99% is the rain-fed rice practice. So that means the farmer over there can grow rice only just 1 year. The second difference context for this rice farming in these two regions is the types of rice growing. The rice that growing in the central regions is kind of like the long grain rice, but the types of rice growing in the northeast regions is mostly jasmine rice, which more expensive and kind of like the premium rice of Thailand. However, there are many different contexts, but there are one thing that exactly the same context for rice cultivations in these two areas is how farmers practice in the rice farming. 99% of the rice farming in Thailand is conventional rice farming, which extensively use the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides to ensure that the farmer get the highest use of the rice in each time they grow. So this creates a lot of negative externality in terms of health to the farmer themselves and also to the ecosystem service and also environment. In addition to that, the conventional rice practice in Thailand, one thing they usually do after harvest the rice in each crop, they burn the rice store every year. So this creates a big pollution problem, which right now is a big pollution problem, air pollution problem in Thailand, which not impact the health of the people also, and also destroy the ecosystem service, and also destroy the nutrition of the soil and destroy the soil structures of the rice farming itself. So from this problem, right now in Thai society, many people talking about should we switch to the organic rice practice to mitigate the negative externality that occur from the conventional rice. So as I think everybody here knows that organic practice is eco-friendly. They provide a lot of positive externality to the society in terms of ecosystem service, biodiversity, as well as health to the people, including farming and consumer. However, there are also a lot of debate around this issue too in Thailand. One thing is about the price. If we transform the conventional rice farming to the organics, how much the price the consumer need to pay for that, for example. And the one, I think the one that the most controversial is it feasible to transform the conventional rice paddy to the organic ones in the wider length, I mean in the wider area in Thailand. So this is kind of issue that in discussion in Thailand, but we have no scientific data to support this kind of discussions. So in this study, we propose that we're going to compare under the TEEBAgriFood project framework to compare two rice practice, the conventional rice practice and the organic ones. And we choose the area, the northeast area as our study sites. So there are two provinces that we choose, which called the Surin and Buriram province, which is in the south of the northeast regions of Thailand. The main reason that we choose these two provinces, first, you can see from the land use information, agricultural land use in these two provinces. In Surin province, 70% of agricultural area is actually rice paddy. The same pattern is more than 50% of the agricultural area in Buriram is rice paddy too. In addition to that, we can find farmers who actually convert the rice paddy from the conventionals to the organic rice in both provinces. So there are about like 0.8% of the rice paddy in Surin is organic rice, and another 0.4% of rice paddy is organic rice in Buriram, which is small number, but there are the significant. If we turn these proportions to the hectare, it would be about like almost 5,000 acres in Surin province for organic rice. So that means we can compare to rice practice in the same almost in the same area. We have the same soil structures, same amount of land volume, and the same amount of the temperatures. So that means we hope we can get the precise comparisons. So this slide showing just for your information about whether the land in these two provinces is suitable for paddy rice or not. So most of the agricultural land in these two provinces is suitable for paddy rice. It's covered by the green area. This is a suitable area for rice growing. So what we plan to do for comparing and trade-off between the conventional and organic rice, we plan to do for the entire value chains of the rice in Thailand. We plan to do from the farm gate level, starting from the ecosystem service. So this shown by like the earthworm that work in the rice paddy, to the beautiful bird that presents the biodiversity in the rice paddy, to the livelihood of the farmer, which cover not only the economic impact, but also the health of the farmer. We go outside the farm gate we're looking for the social impacts. Because from our review and talk to the people who work with the farmer, the organic rice farmer, the common pattern for the organic rice farmer is that they create the groups. So that means it can be the social cooperation impact or the social empowerment. We will explore about this. It also the same pattern for the manufacturing and processing. Finally, we will go to the final one, is the consumer. We plan to look into main dimension for the consumer. The first one is about the health issue, which can be impacted by the pesticides used in the rice growing, and also the dietary variations. These two issues we will be looking for the consumer. When we get the data, quantify it, if we have the data available, and value it in terms of money, we will do the trade-off analysis to check whether conventional rice or organic rice can provide the net benefit to the society. So for our possible outcome that we expect, it can be the conventional rice is better. This means we do nothing. Because right now, 99% of the rice farming in Thailand is conventional. However, if it turns out that organic ones is better, we need to looking how to do it, to spread information, convince the policymakers to transform the rice farming in Thailand to organic one. We also thinking like, we talk to the people in the rice department. He said, maybe we need to consider another choice. So we don't know yet at this stage what that we will include, but if we have time and budget, I think we will consider another practice that also right now is kind of like one of the policy of the rice department, such as the, what is called the sustainable rice practice, which actually proposed by the UNEP. So we will be looking for this. So for the next step, for the scenario build-up, we will start to engage with the relevant stakeholder to ask them to help us to set up the scenario that should be make sense and also cover every important issues. One thing that we plan to do in this study is understanding the farmer. Because if we want to have the policy that efficient and have the great impact, first thing we need to understand the mind of the farmer, who are the key players. So we plan to do this in this study too. So if we know the minds and understand the behavior, which includes unbiased behavior or biased behavior, that could help us shape the policy to become the more efficient and effective. And I'm not quite sure for the third and fourth one, as our study have like time limit. So if we have chance to do, we will propose to do the real implementations. I mean, like, convince some farmer to switch to the better practice, and then we can promote this kind of activity, which could actually draw attention not from policymaker, but actually from the consumer. Yes, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's take about 10-15 minutes for questions before we go to the next session. So with that, can I ask if anyone has any questions they want to ask to any of the panelists, or any general remarks? Preferably questions. We have lots of comments today. Any questions first? Any questions? Yeah, Pietro.
A small question, more curiosity. I was wondering, what's the time frame of these projects? Is it like quarter, a year, or more than a year?
I can answer that. The time frame of the project, currently the project ends the end of this year. We may seek an extension from the IKI Secretariat for various reasons, but currently ends the end of this year. Any other questions or comments to the panel?
I have a question, not necessarily for the panel, but I see that there is agri-food complexes are really complex and huge systems, no? How do you identify the specific inputs in the system that you have probability to change, to really incite, so that you can change the system and the path that the system is taking. I don't know if I made myself understand.
I think, well, sorry? Does anyone on the panel want to answer that, or? It's a very, okay, I would suggest it's probably quite a difficult question in some respects. So what we have to do, my previous answer, is we have been, the reason it's taken a long time with IKI countries, we've been very, very precise in defining, as far as we can, the scenarios. And the scenarios look at different intervention options, which include inputs to the system. The inputs in the end, and the changes inputs to the system, in the end we're looking at, because they're creating outcomes, which we propose are going to be beneficial in terms of livelihoods and terms of conservation outcomes. So we always have to look for changes in terms of inputs to the system which are viable, credible, for which there's a governance structure for that input change to occur. But as you pointed out, and you've seen in the last 2 days, the complexity of that is very large. And even getting to that point and decide on that intervention is a really interesting and instructive process. And I think we can say that certainly in each of the 4 stakeholder meetings, there were situations, for instance, where agriculture and ecosystems ministries were talking about this really for the first time as a consequence of our project. So even as you were mentioning in terms of the Millennium Institute, it very much is the case that even the process of applying the TEEBAgriFood study creates benefits, I would argue, which are very different than, say, for instance, an academic research proposal, say when I was at Edinburgh, where the academic decides in advance, well, I'm looking at this compared to this, I'm now going to do it. Yeah? So there's been a 2-year process to make that happen, and a very constructive process today. Any other further questions or comments on the studies? Okay. Yes, please. Yasmin, go ahead.
I have a comment on what has been discussed also by Colombia, the difficulty of also including the agricultural sector. And I just wanted to share our experiences from Mexico and from our Inception workshop, which we held last week, because actually at this workshop we had like 50% from the agricultural sector participants and 50% from the environmental sector, and the workshop was actually hosted by the Agriculture Ministry. So maybe this is just of interest to the participants here, how we did it. I mean, on the one hand, we have a positive political situation at the moment in Mexico, but what we also did is that during the last years when we prepared starting the study, we very much focused our dialogue with the Agriculture Ministry on positive experiences. So there has been a lot of difficulties in the dialogue between the agricultural and the environmental sector, because also in Mexico there's a lot of subsidies, or there have been a lot of subsidies with negative impacts on the environment, but we kind of not mentioned it. When we engaged with the agricultural sector, we were looking a lot into their programs on agro biodiversity and genetic diversity in the agricultural sector. We picked a lot of case studies with small-scale farmers that we have, and every time we engaged with them, we only looked at the positive sides to really include them as part of the solution. And I think that is why we got this positive uptake from the agricultural sector, and them really leading this TEEB approach. Because, yeah, even though there are a lot of problems with the agricultural sector, we focused on the positive examples. Just as a lessons learned from our first steps on TEEB, which might be helpful also for other countries.
Thank you, Yasmin. That is very helpful. And I think we've tried to do that. And then what I'll probably do is ask the panelists, and each of them in turn have mentioned this, but basically the challenges you faced in terms of the interaction and trying to get what may not be your core constituency on board. So I'll ask in a second. But just to say, what I presented on day 1 to introduce and day 2 to introduce, in terms of suggesting and presenting that TEEBAgriFood is not agriculture bashing, was taken through to Inception workshops as well. It was also taken through to the earlier dialogues that we had, even before the Inception workshops, with the ministries to make sure that they understood exactly what this project was about, and it was trying to create positive synergies, when in many cases agriculture and environment seem to be in conflict. And obviously, in terms of political economy, it's very sensible to steer away from certain issues which might be politically very, very sensitive, which we've tried to do as well. But why don't I just, as a final comment to the panel then, or question, you've touched on it already, but maybe go through, if you have any final comments, but particularly if you can talk about the interaction between agriculture and environment, and indeed other ministries, and the process of making that happen, how difficult it was, what you managed to achieve.
So I already mentioned part of this in the presentation. Effectively, we've had trouble getting good participation from our agricultural ministry in particular, but we've tried to also focus on agencies that are part of the ministry and not directly the authorities, so we've got some participation from them. And we are developing strategies through partners that we already have to be able to get there. So we are partners with the Agricultural Research Institute of the country. So through them, we might be able to get more attention. Of course, framing and steering away from any of the maybe contradictory parts is definitely part of the strategy. What has been also a problem for us is during these years, we're changing government and with a very different perspective from the previous one. So we did a lot of the previous work with the old one. Now we have a new one, so we have to start over. That happens.
A generic feature of what we're doing in the TEEB world. I mean, we're talking in general about 3-year projects, and we tend to find we tend to be in every case in the middle of some political changeover or catastrophe or both. Okay, so it's very, very difficult. We have to allow for the fact that there is a political economy here. This is a 3-year project. We have to allow for the fact there'll be changes, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Better or worse, I don't mean in any kind of, only in the sense that we have a certain agenda to livelihoods and conservation, and it can be very complicated for the project to try and realign ourselves, even if that realignment is actually potentially beneficial, each time there's a change. And that doesn't apply just in Colombia, it applies across many of the countries we work in.
Maybe as a response, one of the things we've actually done is try to not only engage high, I guess, decision makers, but also technical practitioners that are more steady, at least in Colombia.
Thank you very much. For the Kenyan case, we didn't have at least challenges in the first instance because we took a different strategy of trying to do, we did meetings, dialogue at ministry level, capitalizing on the relationship that we had with our institution, National Museums of Kenya. So we did several meetings before the inception workshop, like 3 months before that, engaging officers, responsible officers for the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture. So, but the only challenge that we faced was because of the time lapse. Once you talk to one officer in charge of the ministry, there were like transfers, so we really had to restart again to engage new officers in the ministry. But it went very well because we did. Like we went for Ministry of Agriculture, we had several meetings trying to explain to them the objective of the project. And it turns out that we were successful in a way because by the time they were coming to the inception workshop, they already know what the objectives of the project were.
Good. Your experiences in Tanzania.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this stage, for the case of Tanzania, as you know, this project is actually hosted under Vice President Office, and basically they're dealing with the environment, and we have engagement with the Ministry of Agriculture as well. But of course, we don't foresee any challenge in terms of putting on board all these stakeholders together in the future. Of course, the main challenge has been the concern for environment and agriculture has been in terms of water availability, especially when you're talking of the Rufiji River Basin. We're talking of water availability for the environment vis-a-vis agricultural practices, which is going on upstream. So I don't foresee any challenge of engaging all these stakeholders and looking at different scenarios of policy change in engagement of the stakeholders.
Okay, in this state of the Thailand project, right now we haven't found any challenge yet, but from my previous experience in another project that I need to deal with the people from the government or farmer. So the first thing that we need to do is when we before starting the project, we need to talk to them in advance what we are doing and what outcome we are expect, and then we ask them to like help us to clarify or make some decisions that they are interested. So in this case, it's kind of like if they get involved since the starting of the projects, they are usually like we become like the co-worker, colleague, working together for entire project. So this is going to be the strategy that we plan to do. Yeah. But one thing that I experience but rarely happen is similar to the Kenya. Sometimes we're starting working with these people from these organizations, and then the project continue for some time, and then they change. So we need to start over again with the new one. So, but this happen, but rarely happen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to bring this session to a close, and I'd just like to thank the participants in the normal way. So thank you very much.